Stuart, I found out yesterday that these videos are too large to upload.
Really?
Yep. I spent about an hour working on it, and it crashed out every time. It won't accept it.
I will have to then upload it to my site, and you can link it back. And I'll just keep it
We'll
unlisted.
have to figure something else out.
Okay. Yeah.
So thank you all for joining us today. There will be other people joining in as we go along. I just have to say this because I know that it's going to happen. We have a lot to cover today, and I want to give Randy his 5 minutes so that he can share a little bit about, he wanted a 5-minute spotlight, so we made that happen. I want to thank Stuart for spending a lot of time helping us set this up and facilitating. I want to thank Lee for stepping up and bringing a very relevant topic and program to the meeting today. And I want to recognize John Augelli. Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Jelly, like you're making jelly toast and you drop the knife on your toe.
Cool. I believe you're fairly new, and can you just quickly introduce yourself? That's what your business is?
Yeah, I'm John Jelly. I own my own consulting firm called Jelly Consulting, and I do exit and business succession planning. So kind of consultant during the early stages and then project manager to help business owners see it through.
Cool. Welcome to Madison Area Business Consultants.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, we may have met in the past, but I can't recall. Could you just share a little bit about your business? And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm a guest of Lee. So I work for the Wisconsin School of Business Center for Professional and Executive Development. And I'm a consultant to organizational partners for their either organizational or professional and executive development.
Awesome. I know that that encompasses a lot of stuff, so I'd like to learn more about that down the road.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share.
Nancy, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here, everybody.
Cindy, welcome. I think I met you before. We got a great group of people here, and you know, your being here and your interest in the group is much of what inspires me. Eileen, I don't know if I've ever met you. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, Eileen Good. I've been a former MABC member. I just want to make sure I'm not muted. And just kind of stepped away for a few years, but have been invited back by Donna Beesman and Carol Gedkin.
Awesome. Love to have you back. Thank you very much. I would love to give everybody a minute here, but we're going to move right into the program. Stuart, is it okay if I run through my little bit of housekeeping stuff for the organization?
Go for it, John. You're on.
We had a nice meeting yesterday, we meaning the membership committee and myself, and we talked a lot about what's coming up at MABC. And as you may know, I'll let, I'm going to introduce Lee in a second, but June 11th, we have Wayne Breitbart from LinkedIn. He is a top flight LinkedIn expert, and he's going to be running our program that day. And he's going to be sharing a lot with us about how to use LinkedIn for lead generation and business success. The other slots that we have open July through December, we're probably going to set aside November and December for planning and execution. And we're going to have, in September, bring a guest to that meeting, and there'll be prizes. If you bring a guest, we'll put everybody's name in a hat and we'll draw some prizes. The sponsorship is available still for the website. It's really inexpensive, and I jumped on it because nobody else was. I think it's like $100 a quarter. It's cheap, and it one more connection on the web gives you another link back. Good for your search engine optimization. So I'm interested in feedback if there are other people who have a topic that's of interest to consultants. I'm open to that. I do want to share with you that Chris, thank you for doing that survey. Could you just take 1 second and give me the top 2 or 3 bullet points of what your observations were?
John, I'd be happy to. Good morning, everybody. I think the survey was sent out to 39 former members and 10 individuals responded to it. I think that probably the 2 takeaways I would have is that it looks like the primary thing that attracts consultants to join the organization is they are in the early stages of their business, or they may be at a stage where they welcome the idea of finding out more about consulting strategies and things that they can do to grow their business. And the mentoring itself is extremely important. In other words, meeting people at the meetings, sharing ideas, thoughts, developing relationships even outside of the meetings. So those kinds of things I think are most initially important. I think the individuals who left and those who stayed were those who I think the programs, the training kind of connected with, and those that didn't stay either grow their business so rapidly that they couldn't prioritize the MABC, or essentially they grew past the kinds of things that the organization was offering. I do think, in closing though, I would just say that the one thing that I took out is that individuals were enormously positive about the MABC. So I think all of you have been members for a long time should feel very proud that this organization, I think, is very well thought of and it does a great job.
So in line with that, my takeaway is that the people that are involved in Madison area business consultants want programs and education that are related to how to be a better consultant and how to get more consulting clients. Let's face it, that's where it's at. The world today has changed. It's going to be more difficult than ever. And as I explained with Nancy and Pam and Heather yesterday, we need to be the lifeboat for where a lot of these business owners are going to come to for advice on how to navigate the new economy and coming out of the pandemic shutdown. So we hold a fairly large responsibility in society today to be a center point for where professionals and business owners can come to for help. We have a tremendous amount of knowledge cumulatively in our group, and we have to continue to bring that forward. One of the things that I talked a little bit about yesterday, specifically with Pam, is I needed to develop a better understanding of what her specific consulting deliverable is so that I can understand what she's really good at, what's her primary skill set, and how can we find a way to refer more clients to each other. So one of the ideas that I have is for everybody to write down on 1 page or less, what is it exactly that you do? What is your primary service deliverable? We all may have skills and capabilities beyond that primary thing, but if I was to recommend you to one of my clients, what is the one thing that you need me to know about so that I can potentially get you in front of an opportunity? And I'm going to propose that we all take time to write down on 1 page or less with a specific headline, what is your deliverable? I'm talking with Melody about launching a blog on the MABC website, and we need to populate it with content. And there's concern about consistency and content development. I don't think that's a big deal because we have all the people. And generally speaking, most of us have information to share. So I'm going to lay that out there today and say that this is going to be something that I'm going to continue to work on. So I digress, but I wanted to get that point across. I want to take a minute to introduce Randy DeLobst, who has a lot of experience in analyzing insurance programs. Randy, are you with us? He was with us and now I don't see him. Well, anyways, he's supposed to do the spotlight this morning. I don't know where he went because he logged on for a second and then he logged out. So maybe he'll come back. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speaker today. And then Stuart, do you want to go through procedures and protocol today in terms of the chat box and stuff like that? Stuart, are you with me?
Sorry. Yes, I we'll go ahead and do that with Lee. He and I synced up. So, oh, all right. If you look, just meeting protocol and etiquette, a couple of things that we can do to make this meeting more effective for everybody. On the lower part of your screen on the left-hand side, if you're in front of a PC or Mac, you'll see a mute button. I would encourage everybody to mute themselves when they're not speaking. Everyone is doing that as they're coming in anyway, so we're pretty up to date with that. In the middle of the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there is an opportunity to open a participant panel. If you're using two monitors, you can move it over to that second monitor. If you're on one monitor, by opening it up, you can use the emoticons on the bottom to go ahead and show your feedback, whether you want to respond yes or no to questions that are pulled, or tell us to speed up or slow down. And there's more features as well, including hand raising and thumbs up, etc. On the right-hand side of the area right here on the screen, you can see, please write your questions or comments in the chat. That needs to be enabled. You would open a chat window. That chat window gives you access to either writing everyone, or you can send a private message to anyone that's logged into the meeting. And once you open that chat window, you'll see that there is a place on the bottom of that chat window to go ahead and enter your message in. You type your message in. We can share files as well, and we will be using that chat pretty robustly as we move into it. And we'll come back to this and practice in just a minute, but I'm going to go back and John, let you introduce Lee.
Yeah, well, Lee Johnsen put together a webinar a week or two ago, and I was fortunate to be able to attend that. His business, Partners in Development and partnersindevelopment.net, is an organization that, Lee has over 30 years of experience helping businesses increase productivity and work relationships for sustainable growth in remote setups. And I thought that with the way the world is now, where we're all working virtually to a large degree, Lee would be a great presenter, and his services are probably in demand right now. So if you have a client that has a remote workforce and you are interested in finding out if they need help to improve their quality control, process and flow, all the way down the line, I would encourage you to follow up with Lee after the meeting today and talk with him about what his deliverable is, so that you can potentially bring Lee to the conversation as a valuable resource. And Lee, I'm very grateful, and I want to turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. I'm happy to be with you. Many of us have limited experience leading remote teams, and most likely we haven't had much training of how to do it. And then all of a sudden, wham, we woke up one morning and the way we conduct business, hopefully in the short term, and our lives has changed. Most of the workforce is now working from home, and we've had to jump in with both feet to figure out how we're going to navigate this new normal. I want to tell you a little bit early on some of the resources you'll get from the session today. As you heard John mention, the recording will be made available through Stuart, and we'll figure that out. But you're also going to get a couple of checklists that I'll talk about later, and that is, one of them is around virtual communications, technology tools and uses, and another one is a virtual meeting checklist that you may find helpful. And I'll be uploading those files during the session today in group chat, so you can have access to them right away. I founded Partners in Development in 2002 when I left the corporate world as Director of Management Development for a Fortune 500 company. And since then, I've had a chance to work with a number of organizations as a consultant in leadership training, organizational development, learning design, and some executive coaching. You know, the motto of Partners in Development, closing gaps in workplace performance, acknowledges that there are lots of reasons why team members either do or don't achieve their expected results. And some of those issues are related to the work environment, and others are related to the team members themselves. Our philosophy is to work with organizational leaders and team members to figure out what all of those reasons are for the performance gaps, so that we can identify some solutions to help close those. In 2014, I spent 5 months working in Saudi Arabia while managing my business in the US. And I have to say it wasn't easy. But I became fascinated with the differences between on-site teams and those whose members were separated by geography, time zones, technology, and culture. And I noticed that organizations that don't address these differences risk some disappointing results. So as John pointed out, I specialize in helping global and virtual teams navigate some of these challenges and opportunities in working in a virtual world. I wrote this book literally virtually because leaders and team members who do work virtually have to learn to communicate and collaborate differently. And I want to share some of those things with you today. But first, let me ask you, all of us are experiencing some different emotions right now. How are you feeling? So I'd like to invite you to type into group chat, in 1 or 2 words, what's an emotion that you're feeling as you're adapting to this remote workforce? Positive and tentative. I'm seeing excited. A lot of us are excited. Normal, hopeful. That's encouraging. Others.
I'm seeing
Intrigued and
disconnected, mercurial, hopeful, intrigued and excited, disconnected, anxious. They're coming in.
Great. Thanks,
Welcome,
Stu.
Jim.
Hello.
Also
Well,
hopeful.
One of the things I'm appreciating is the hopefulness and the excitement. I see some other words, disconnected, adventurous, grateful for Zoom, many of us are, and craving to connect with folks in 3D. Well, what I can say is that our customers and clients are feeling the same way. But I have a hunch that they're also feeling a little bit more on the anxious side than they are on, the optimism. But I think the point is we're not alone. So here's some of the topics that I want to offer today for us to consider. I'm going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail, and we'll talk about how to apply them. And as I said, this is going to be an interactive session. So we're going to do some group chats, some polls, and even a breakout group. I want to talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges associated with this rapid transition to the remote workforce and how we align our services with our clients' needs. We're going to look at some techniques to enhance virtual communication skills and planning and leading virtual meetings that are meant to engage. And then lastly, as a group, talk about what are some strategies that help us to move from survival to thriving. Because organizations shifted very quickly, a lot of them weren't fully prepared for that. And this is a big part of their angst right now, and probably is going to be for some weeks to come. And these are what I think are some of the most important challenges. Many of them hadn't prepared or kept current their business continuation plans, so they're doing a bit of scrambling. Many of them have not yet the technology in place to fully support team members. And I spoke with someone last week. Bandwidth is an issue for some. And you can bet that there's going to be this period of confusion and instability for a while, because no matter how well planned things are, the unexpected is going to surface. And incidentally, people who work remotely 100% of the time are the most disengaged of any group. So figuring out how to keep them engaged, especially during the anxiety of the pandemic, is going to be a bit challenging. And many organizations lack adequate documentation in their work processes and procedures. And without some of that, some best practices are going to be lost. So from an organizational perspective, these are some big challenges that leaders are struggling with. And if you can help them deal with these, I think we'll have their ears. In addition to these organizational challenges, here are some of the human concerns that are happening during this survival period. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand as you take a look at these. How many of you have experienced at least one of these past few weeks? So this is a chance for you to raise your hand for those emoticons and give us a take. And Stu, I'm going to ask you to share with us what you're seeing.
Absolutely. Lots of hands going up. We've got Angie hand up, Jen hand up, Judy hand up, Nancy hand up, Pamela hand up, Mary Helen hand up, John, Jelly hand up, Lisa hand up. Let's play the majority of the hands. We're looking at about 60% of participants, or 50% or so. Or at least those that are finding the hand up chat. And you can do that by clicking in the participant window and find your hand there.
Great. Well, it's going to take us a while to adapt and adjust to this current state from confusion.
I went to another site and have joined the meeting, period. Now what, question mark?
Has Randy found his internet connection?
Yes, I have.
All right, Randy, we'll come back to you for the spotlight after Lee's presentation.
Sounds good, thanks.
All right. So as I was saying, it's going to take us a while to adapt and adjust to this current state of confusion and instability. So there are some things that need immediate attention to get through. And while there aren't any easy answers, I do think a lot of what we can do to help our clients and customers fall into two basic categories, and that's structure and support. When I was 47 years old, I completed the Chicago Marathon within 2 minutes of qualifying for the Boston Marathon. And I'd never run a marathon before. But what got me through was a training program that provided structure and a training team that provided support. And that's what I think virtual leaders and team members need from us: structure and support. Structure is about determining what needs to be done and when and how and where to do it. It's focused on the present, and it considers both efficiency and consistency. And so from your perspective, what do you think clients need from us that are going to help them to deal with their present challenges? So for example, you might say checklists with tips and techniques, resources, training. What other things would you add? And I'm going to ask you if you've got some thoughts around what people need to provide them more structure. What would be some additional things? And please go ahead and type those into group chat. What can we do to help provide our clients and customers some structure to help them deal with what needs to get done and how to do it and where to do it and so on? One of those, you might say, are procedures, as you can see. Just some techniques or some advice. Tim says, easily accessible leadership. Great. What else are you thinking? What is their best time of day to connect? Sure. remote management and support schedules. I'm seeing measurement and ways to communicate effectively. Thanks, Chris. Leaders to open to hear their team members, asking good questions, an outlet to share feelings that they've expressed. Great. And in addition to structure, what we also know is that they need support. And support's focused on the human side of our work. It's about relationships and emotional intelligence and leading change. It's about why the work is important, the purpose that it serves, and the organization's vision. So some examples of structure might be encouragement or serving as a sounding board to look at things differently, or maybe it's a motivating story. So from a support perspective, what would be some other ways that we could provide support to our clients to help them stay focused on their mission and their vision and support their emotional needs while they go through this? Advanced reflection questions before connecting as a team, helping people think about, what are the questions that they need to think. What would be some other ones from a support perspective? Allow for social networking in the virtual environment. Great suggestion, Chris. Affordable, dependable advice. Coaching, a safe space to share worries and work through them. Excellent. Provide positive reinforcements for the work that does get done. Help them to see the positives. As we pointed out, this is an optimistic group who's encouraged, and I think we're going to need to help folks with that. See, during this time of survival, they do need structure to provide clear direction. They need help in figuring out how to work virtually, what stays the same and what changes. And that's where I think we need to focus our attention to help them gain a new sense of stability. But they also need this sense of the future and staying connected to their vision and being inspired and having a sense of empowerment. And that's where I believe support comes in. So what I'd like us to think about is how we're uniquely positioned to help our clients, not only during this time of surviving, but thriving and adapting to this new way that they do business. And that means we need to develop and demonstrate skills that position ourselves to be even more valuable resources, just both for the present and for the future. So these are 4 of the skills that I think will help us to add value to our clients navigating from this transition of survival to revival. The first one is to engage and align our services with their mission and values and challenges. Secondly, to demonstrate some of our emotional intelligence skills and virtual communications, leveraging communications technology, and then planning and leading virtual meetings that engage and build trust and problem solve. And certainly there are more, and a bit later in the session, that's when I'm going to ask you to share your ideas for how we can collectively contribute to our clients and each other. But let me start with the first one. There's an old story about a consulting firm that wanted to better understand teams' productivity and motivation. So they found 2 teams of people doing exactly the same work. And the work that they were doing was chipping rock. That's what they did all day long. So they asked this first team, the members of that team, what is it that you do? Tell us about your work. And the team members sort of looked at the consultants and they said, well, we chip rock all day. So the consultants thanked them, and then they went to the second group who was doing exactly the same work, and they asked him, tell us about your work. What is it that you do? And the answer they got was, we're a part of a team that's building a cathedral as a monument to our love for God. Which team would you want to be on? See, the leader of the second team helped the members connect their work to a larger purpose. When people are separated by differences in geography and culture and technology and time zones, it's easier to lose sight of the big picture and the team's purpose. And virtual leaders have to be intentional and make time for their team members to stay connected to the larger meaning of the work. And if a leader of an organization, whether that's a division, a department, or a team, can't describe their group's mission and vision, team members are going to become disengaged and unaligned. So think about how you can help organizational leaders and their team members talk about how their work connects to the bigger picture. It's not only focusing on what gets done, but also why it's important. And in times of turmoil, team members need to know that their work means something bigger than just accomplishing the task. I think we can help them do that with stories and images, and examples, and marketing initiatives and training. Emotional intelligence is a big deal, and it's the ability to perceive and manage our own emotions, and it's also about being able to pick up on the emotions of others through their body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. When we're perceptive of these things, we're much more fluent in building positive relationships. And emotional intelligence is a big deal. So we have a poll for you that Stu's going to bring up. And the question is, what percentage of the difference between outstanding and average leaders is linked to emotional intelligence? So what percentage of the difference between average and outstanding leaders is linked to emotional intelligence?
Lee, we're going to have to hang on a sec. I was logged into a second device, so it disabled my polling.
Okay.
That's okay. You've got the result here. They can type.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a clue. If in your own mind you've already made your selection, here's what the research says. 90% of the difference between outstanding and average leaders is linked to emotional intelligence. So I think most of us are pretty good in this group, are already pretty good at emotional intelligence, especially in our face-to-face interactions. But what happens when we're working remotely? Let me share with you a little bit about how words, tone of voice, and body language impact communication. In face-to-face communication, we've got access to 3 types of information: words, tone of voice, and body language. Jot down, if you will, what are the percentages that these 3 modes influence the understanding of a message? In other words, what percentage of the meaning of a message is based on the words alone? What percentage on the tone of voice, and what percentage of body language? And when you've got that figured out, go ahead and type into group chat, what's the percentage that you think is based on word alone? Somebody else said that they already used that factoid. So I'm seeing 10%, 40%, 20%, 30%. So far the range has been from sort of 10 to 30%. Here's what the research says. The words account for about 7% of the meaning behind the message, tone of voice 38%, and body language 55%. Keeping in mind this is face-to-face communication, and particularly when there's not alignment between the words and the tone of voice and body language, people will place far more emphasis on tone of voice and body language than the words. So now we're having a phone conversation with a client and you don't have access to body language. What percentage of the meaning behind the message do you think is based on the words now? So in other words, what percentage of the message do words account for now? And go ahead and type those into chat. So I'm seeing 40%, 20%, 10, another 10, 30%, 45, 20. Well, here's what the research says. Now the words move up to a whopping 15%. People still pay more attention to tone of voice. So when we're communicating virtually, we have to be much more specific in our words and check our understanding to make sure we've really heard what our clients are telling us and to verify that they've understood what we've said. You know, most folks only listen effectively about 25% of the time. And that means that we're likely missing about 75% of what we're hearing from them, and likewise vice versa. So communication is different from face-to-face communication. That is, virtual communication is different. So we have to be much more focused on tone of voice when we can hear it and being specific in our words. You know, a lot of us have a love-hate relationship with technology. We love what it can do, but we hate the climb up the learning curve to get comfortable with it, and the choices of technology can seem overwhelming. Nancy, you asked about statistics on email. Yeah, what I would add is that with email or text, the words are 100% of the message. Now, when you've received those, do emails or texts ever get misinterpreted? Even in the absence of tone, people oftentimes will infer tone based on words alone. And in fact, oftentimes we make assumptions that aren't correct. So that's why it's important, again, that especially when using text, we're specific in our language and we verify that there's understanding of that. I had an email from a colleague last Saturday that asked me about how I was coming along with my deck. And I said, it's coming along fine. I just can't wait for warmer weather to put out the furniture. And later he emailed me back and he says, no, I meant your PowerPoint deck that you're working on. So I had a good example of how we can miscommunicate on text alone. So thanks for asking that question. Here's just a simple little chart with some examples of face-to-face communication, but also synchronous, which is same-time technology like phone, web conference, instant messaging, so on. And then asynchronous is technology associated with different times. So email, blogs, reports, newsletters, and so on. My point is that if you have the opportunity to choose technology for your organization, pick just a few synchronous or same-time technologies and asynchronous, and then learn to master them. This is a chart that shows some common tools that are available today with some examples of synchronous and asynchronous technology, some best uses for each of these. So don't worry if you can't read the small print, because we're going to make the chart available to you right now. And I'm going to attempt to leverage this technology to put it up into chat. So bear with me just a second while I make the attempt to do this.
So Lee, I'm going to jump in here and just share that as Lee is doing this, you have the ability, it is now there, well done. If you are at a PC or a Mac, you can go ahead and click on this and download it to your own laptop, so you'll have it immediately. It will be made available later on the MABC website if we can find a place for that. But I would encourage you maybe to grab this now so you can follow along, or you can have it for yourselves. So turn to the chat, find out where Lee has uploaded that document, and you can download it to your own devices. That's great. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate it. It worked well. So we've got
all right. Success. And this is one of the things that Stu and I had to rehearse a bit before I could do this. In addition to this handout, what I would also offer is keep it simple if you can. As I said, select a few and use those consistently. And once you've selected your technology, make time to train yourself and practice with others to get comfortable and efficient using it. The biggest reason that technology is underutilized is because people aren't skilled and confident in using it. Just a couple of other points to note. Video engages people, and it's particularly helpful if you have emotional issues to discuss, because then you're able to see the person's face as well as hear their words and their tone of voice. Email is great if you're only communicating with a few people, but beyond that, I would recommend using some collaboration tools like SharePoint or Microsoft Teams that allow for message tracking and collaboration. And just to reemphasize, always make it a habit to verify understanding of any agreements that were made. So let's face it, right now, nearly all meetings are virtual, and most of us working at home, everybody's multitasking and trying to balance our calls and our families. But I want you to think for a moment beyond today, before the pandemic. And I want you to think a moment about attending a virtual meetings. And we've got a poll here for you. And the question is, what percentage of people do you think are multitasking during a virtual meeting?
Lee, I need to apologize again because I logged in from a secondary device.
Okay.
It has disabled my polling feature. And
okay,
now
no polls today.
And because I'm recording, I'm unable to.
That's one of the things we'll adapt to. So let me just ask you to type it into group chat. What percentage of people do you think are typically multitasking during a virtual meeting? Gretchen says 60, some say 100, some say 92, 80, 75, 90, 75, 85. These are all pretty high. Well, you know what? The answer is about as many. It's been found that about as many as 90% of people in virtual meetings are multitasking. I'll bet some of you are multitasking right now. So let me share with you some ideas to improve virtual meetings and increase engagement. The best virtual meetings are distinctly different from most in-person meetings. So I want to share with you what are some of the key differences between a typical face-to-face meeting and an effective virtual meeting. For a typical face-to-face meeting, the research shows that the majority of the time is spent in the actual meeting itself, with about 10% of time invested in planning the meeting and another 10% as follow-up. Now, look at the differences in terms of how time is spent in an effective virtual meeting. Leaders of the best virtual meetings make time up front, not only in planning the agenda, but they also consider technology that they're going to use to engage the participants and facilitate decision making. So they're going to use polls and chats and screen sharing and live webcam and other tools that keep people engaged and providing input. Where the planning pays off is that there's considerably less time in the meeting itself. And then of course, follow-up is important to make sure that everybody has the same understanding and is clear about their responsibilities.
So are effective virtual team meetings more effective because more time is spent on planning?
They're more effective because with that planning, you're looking at ways to engage people. You're really thinking about what are the key decisions we need to make and what information do people need in order to have that. In some instances, what may be a part of that planning is sending out an agenda in advance. It may be sending out information for people to read and prepare for so that when you get to the meeting, people come already familiar with what's going to be talked about and how to participate. Val says, seemed like face-to-face meetings could benefit from a shift to this virtual meeting breakdown. I agree, Val. How many of us have gone to meetings and found ourselves either A, wondering why we're in this meeting, or B, that there was a lack of organization and preparation that extended the meeting time. And John, you add that in your sales and consulting, you teach people to use pre-meeting agendas in every case. That's a very good practice to follow. So I want to share with you a tool that I think can help guide you through your virtual meetings. So here's how some of those best virtual meetings are created. This is our virtual team meeting checklist that helps leaders and members leverage their time, both by providing some structure and some support in order to make some good decisions. And again, don't worry if you can't read the fine print, because right now I'm going to attempt to upload this checklist so that you can have it on your own. And here we go.
So Lee, I have a question.
Yes.
Because I am technically challenged and have been unable to upload our Zoom meetings on the MABC website or YouTube channel, anywhere. Is it possible for you to share your PowerPoint with everybody so that everyone can have the content right away?
I am glad to share a PDF of the PowerPoint, John. I don't know that I can do that right now in real time, but I may be able to do that at the end.
Maybe something to think about for follow-up.
Might take me a couple minutes, or yeah, maybe that's something that we can make available as a follow-up.
Thank you.
So in addition, what I'll also add to the checklist, in addition to planning, make sure that you allow for about 5 to 10 minutes at the beginning of the meeting for people to connect socially. Invite the participants to share a success, a hobby, something fun. In face-to-face meetings, this happens more naturally, but it's important because it helps to build social bonds among participants and boost engagement and commitment. If you can, share meeting responsibilities by involving others in either facilitating parts of the meeting or managing polls and chats that are used. Ask someone to keep notes or minutes for the meeting. And then just to emphasize again, follow-up's important to make sure that there's a common understanding of accountabilities and assignments. So just to recap, these are the skills that I think each of us will need to move from survival to revival, and then eventually to thrive in the days ahead. And certainly there are others, and that's where you come in. These are some of the areas where we can help with both structure and support. And you've already seen these. So in our remaining time, what I'd like to do is engage us in a bit of brainstorming as to how we can support our clients and customers by providing services and resources that help them both during the survival period, but also how we can emerge into the thriving period. And to do that, we're going to divide into some breakout groups. And Stuart's going to help us to do that.
Lee, would you mind if I asked just one question that I'm sort of confused about before you could do that?
Sure.
So I wanted to go back to the meeting structure and the 50% plan. Yep. I think, honestly, I got a little lost. If I have an hour virtual meeting scheduled, does that 50% planning suggest that at 30 minutes of that meeting should be about planning for the meeting? Or does that take place prior to the meeting and you're executing that plan at that meeting?
That's a great question, Chris. And to clarify, that would be time that you're spending prior to the beginning of the meeting.
So thank you, that makes sense.
Yeah, so if you had an hour long, if you walked into a face-to-face meeting that ended up being an hour, what this is suggesting is spend 30 minutes of time up front, for example, planning that meeting. What's going to happen? How do you prepare people so that when they come into that meeting, people are prepared with the information, ready to make decisions, and then you're finding ways to engage them so that they aren't multitasking and doing other things. Yeah, thanks for the question. So as I said, in a moment, Stu is going to explain how we're going to do the breakout groups. And again, this is perhaps a new experience for some of us, others are familiar with it. But once you're in your group, you're going to be brainstorming some ways that we can work with our clients and customers through this initial period of surviving and then into thriving. So these are a few ideas to kind of get your thinking started. Some survival strategies, if you will. What would be some things that we can do to help our clients and customers that have technology concerns or financial concerns or engagement, helping them deal with their stress, or looking at their work processes and procedures. Focusing longer term, are there some strategies that we can begin thinking about to help them clarify their organization mission and vision during these rapid business changes? We may find that some businesses emerge in a different way than when they close. For those of them that have closed, they may emerge differently. Can we help them think about workforce development? There are going to be a lot of human resource policies and procedures that are going to have to change, both in the short term as well as long term. Financial planning, business development, and marketing. So these are just some ideas to get your thinking started, and you're going to come up with more. So once you're in your breakout group, we'd like you to come up with as many ideas as you can as to services and resources that you can provide. We're also going to ask you, when you get into your groups, and this is going to be a bit of an experiment for all of us, to identify someone who would be willing to scribe your group's ideas. And Stu will talk about how to capture those ideas so that we can share those with the large group. And then also somebody who could be a spokesperson from your group that can give us maybe a 2-minute summary of the highlights of what your conversations were. So with that, Stuart, I'm going to ask you to step in and talk a little bit about the breakout groups. I see that right now we've got about 37 people participating right now. So Stuart's going to break you into groups of whatever size makes the most sense with the time we have. We're going to take about 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes in your conversations to do some brainstorming. And then when we come back, as I said, we're going to ask a spokesperson to share what has been scribed and highlight some of the key points of your conversations. We're also hoping to be able to capture the ideas that come out of your breakout groups so that those could be shared at some point too. So Stuart, I'm going to ask you to step in here and walk us through the process.
Perfect. What I'm doing is just typing instructions into the chat. In just a moment, I will be creating breakout rooms, and there'll be 4 to 5 participants in these rooms. They will be automatically assigned. So it's just at random, whoever's room you end up in. You will get a prompt on your screen to join a breakout room. When you click on that, you will then go into a different virtual space connected to a smaller group where it's easier to exchange your ideas. Once in that room, again, as Lee explained, choose amongst yourselves someone to lead the discussion to ensure that everybody communicates with each other and that there's interactivity. Maybe just do a quick go around with introductions. And then as I see that you've put in here, Lee, the person whose birthday is closest today, awesome. And then moving forward, the next closest birthday, that would be the spokesperson. Capture notes, and a way to do that, once we are in the breakout rooms, we will lose this screen or access to it. So I would encourage you to open up your chats in those breakout rooms, capture your notes into the chat. It will go into the main chat area that we can debrief when we come back. As we come to the close of that breakout room time, and I'm looking at the clock now, we'll give you about 12 minutes in those breakout rooms, at which point you will get a prompt to come back into the main room. We'll have about 30 seconds to do that. When that occurs, you can either wait until you're yanked back into the main room, or you can choose on your own to join the main body room. Now, in the meantime, I might be jumping into the rooms just to make sure everyone's doing okay. I would, as a facilitator, walk in and just check in the groups, but I'll be coming in and coming out, so be prepared for visitors to do that along the way. All right. Any questions? You can raise your hands at this moment. I want to make sure that everyone's clear on the instructions. I think it's more of an experiential thing, and when we're into it, it'll become intuitive later. So let me go ahead and create those rooms. I don't see any hands up in the chat or in the participant area. So coming into breakout rooms now. We're going to open the rooms. You've been invited to join rooms. Go ahead and click on join.
Okay.
So the recording has resumed, just so you know.
Okay,
and I'm going to be closing breakout rooms.
Sorry, we're late.
That's
Yeah.
okay. That will bring people back, and you'll catch up from there. So we've got people coming back in about 30 seconds or sooner.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Sometimes mornings go a little better than planned, and sometimes they don't. Good morning, Gretchen.
Oh, I got lost. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be here. I want to be back with my group. Sorry.
Well, we'll take you if you want.
Yeah, Gretchen, you pulled yourself out. That's okay. The others are coming back. They're closing in just a few minutes. We'll see a lot of people popping back into the main meeting.
Wow.
Sorry.
Put me back.
Hey.
I'm gonna go back into the matrix.
Get to say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody. I love you.
Oh,
Yeah, but really, what's with that palm tree?
It looks inviting.
That was beautiful.
Does anyone have the little blue screen of death on the computer?
No?
Okay, interesting. I wonder if it's bandwidth issues.
Shoot. That's not good.
No, so maybe
Or a different
the
virtual
transport
background.
took all the bandwidth, and I'm out in outer space.
No, we see you.
Okay.
Hi, Holly.
Hey.
Are we all back, Stuart?
Yep.
We are beginning to come back. Yeah, the rooms have been closed, and therefore people have been pulled back into this, whether they wanted to or not.
All right. Well, I don't know exactly how many groups that we have ended up with. And in the interest of time, maybe we could just ask each group to share one survival strategy and one strategy to thrive. And as I said, hopefully we can capture these in group chat so that they're available later on. So Stuart, would you know the group, so if you would do a little round robin for us?
Well, actually, I've closed the group, so I didn't jot down all the names of who was in each group. Kind of a learning opportunity for me here. However, my recommendation to the groups that I did have the opportunity to visit was to drop those comments into the chat. And then what we can do is just call on those individuals that have typed it in, and then they can report it on those groups. That will keep it exclusive for one reporter from each group. And then if that reporter chooses not to share, they can say who was assigned as the spokesperson for the group. And I'm just looking at this.
I can start.
Okay.
The big aha moment for me, and maybe for other people in the group, was that companies and businesses need to rethink their sales funnel and how to be a change agent in a way that complements the shifting world of sales and customer development.
Excellent.
I took a whole page of notes. It was an incredible session.
Great. Thank you, John. Who's next?
Well, this is Susan Oja, and our illustrious group was Jennifer Revels and Randy DeLops and Lisa and Nancy. So feel free to chime in, group, if I didn't transcribe this quickly enough. But basically, in terms of strategies for survival, we were talking about the importance of technology and how we use that for the strategies going forward. You know, what's coming into play. And another one mentioned in that regard is communication and the importance of that, and truly, as you put it, hearing what clients are saying and then addressing those concerns to really help them with the problems that they're facing today in a variety of scenarios. As far as thriving, the point was made that we need to, looking forward, reduce this bombardment of information from various ways so that we can actually channel it into a way that's we can master, I think.
Thank you. Who would go next?
This is Donna. I can go next. I was the note taker, and Corey actually was going to report, and he was taking notes as well. In terms of short-term comment was that managers need to be more flexible and focus more on outcomes in work rather than hours at work. As a consultant, it's also important to offer flexibility, that what the client needs right now may not be exactly what the contract says. And one of our members said that they are even doing some pro bono work for some clients to help them survive. And he said, we'll figure it out, you know, later on. And it's to his benefit as well that the organization survive. Long term, the suggestion was doing scenario planning, like all the what ifs, how long this lasts, thinking about various scenarios that can happen in the next 6 months to a year. And another idea was that some of the short-term approaches and ways of doing work may actually enhance productivity down the road and may be adapted for long-term efficiencies.
Great. Thank you very much. Next group.
Our group was short and sweet. We really talked about that whole notion of reframing, to reframe where we've been, what we do, to reframe our skill set and to really look at that so that we know what we're going to offer the clients as we begin to thrive. The ability to take those soft skills into the workplace that might not have been rewarded in the past, they're going to be very important. But the processes that we offer to folks are critical for us to really know what they are. And maybe there's old skills that we have that might be really pertinent now that we have forgotten we have. So to really take a look at ourselves so that we know what we can offer our clients. So best to all.
Thank you. Who's next?
I could go next. We talked a bit about some of the challenges with technology when internet connections, cut out and there were audio problems. And we talked about some of the opportunities as well to reframe our services to not only the Dane County market, but also to look further out in Wisconsin and even into other states as to what you can provide virtually, and then to look at digital campaigns then to target those markets, whether that's Google AdWords or Facebook or LinkedIn. So we kind of talked a bit about some of the challenges and then also the opportunities.
Excellent. Thank you. Next.
This is Jen. I'll go next. Our group, and John did a great job, and he put a lot of our notes into the chat, so you can kind of read through those. But kind of summed up with, communication is key right now. You know, what's happening, what's kind of like our status, but also thinking about what might be permanent versus like, you know, is this sustainable? So, you know, discussing if workforces are going to return, or if ultimately we can reduce our footprint in offices, you know, so is this maybe a new normal because of the situation that we're facing, but also because this really does work for our teams. So I'm really kind of helping people work through that. And, you know, is it a preference or it's not? And Angie in our group is in HR, but John had a lot of comments too about that, you know, for some people, they were enjoying the at-home work, and for others, they were already asking, you know, we want to be sure we can come back. So kind of that difference. In the long term, you know, again, really thinking about if these shifts are just a temporary thing, or if it is going to be something that is actually more sustainable. So that idea of we've always done it this way might not, it might be the time to approach that and say, you've always said we've done it this way, but here we're having to change, and ultimately we can change. And thinking about how we're all going to come back, as if our time's going to be busier or maybe in more demand, both as consultants, but also as our clients thinking through that. So.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got time for one more. I kind of lost track of the number of groups we have. We can hear from one more. And then if we don't call on your group, please add that into group chat. So one more.
I'll jump in with our group. We had Eileen and Carol Gedkin and Chris Wodarczyk. One of the things we mentioned focusing on ourselves was that having another income source is really comforting at this particular point in time because of the potential for declining client revenues. And then just one other idea we thought both helps us now, but also in the future, is to use LinkedIn, write articles for it, maybe even focusing on topics like worker safety or the emotional side of this pandemic, in order to keep your name out there. Both now might be helpful, but particularly to keep it active for the future.
Great. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you. I want to attempt to share my screen again now as we wrap up. And what I'd like to say is ultimately where I think we want to get to is that we need to work together as if we're all in the same room, even though we're not. I have a colleague whose motto is AIO, adapt, improvise, and overcome. And I think that's pretty good advice for all of us now. Given the time, we don't really have a lot for questions. I might be able to take one or two, but I want to make sure that we also provide time for our spotlight speaker. So if there's a quick question, I'm happy to answer it. You could also email your questions to me. I'll provide you my email address later. But given the time that we have, I want to, at least, John, ask you to identify who the two folks are who are going to receive a complimentary copy of my book, Leading Virtually. So can you share with us the names of those folks?
Yeah, I'm thinking Jen. And I'm trying to pull my screen back up. But yeah, Jen would be the book winner today.
Okay, we have two.
Jen
There's
Wilson.
always more than one Jen. Oh, thank you. Much appreciated.
That's called making a decision on the fly.
Okay, I didn't catch who the other person is going to be, John, sorry.
You got two books, and we're gonna award the other one to the other Jen.
Okay, Jen and Jen.
Yeah.
So, Jens, if you would send me your email address, thank you. I'll get a copy of those off to you.
Thanks for sharing your books with some of our group.
And if you have additional questions, here's how you can reach me.
And if you'd like to buy Lee's book, how do you buy a book, Lee?
It's available on Amazon.com. Literally, virtually, making virtual teams work.
Cool.
And here's how you can reach me. John, I know that our spotlight speaker, I think, is still here. So if you want to allow him some time now, I think we have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Randy DeLopst. And before I do that, I just wanted to tell everybody how incredible I think this meeting was for me personally, and what I learned in the breakout room, and some very powerful concepts that I need to process that I'm going to incorporate into my life. Randy is a CPCU, certified something, something, something. He runs Taurus Insurance and Risk Management Consulting. And when I had a chance to speak with Randy a little bit about his spotlight today, he shared some of his experiences with me. And one of the things that I learned is that having him do an evaluation and an analysis on your insurance program would potentially not only save you money, but give you incredibly better coverage. And I'm really excited to introduce Randy and have him take his 5 minutes and share with us what's at the core of your business, Randy. Go for it. Where's Randy? He was with us before, and now he dropped out again. I can't believe it. All I can tell you is he was up to bat once. He was up to bat twice, and he has vanished.
He was in our group chat.
Gotta love technology.
Ah, so this is
We'll
like
bring
what Lee
Randy
said.
up, I guess, next month.
Yeah, we adapt, improvise, and overcome.
That's it. So I'll just,
I'll just comment, this is Trey Fisher. If
Yeah.
you're curious about the services that Randy provides, Randy and I are actually working together, collaborating a little bit, and you can find information about his insurance consulting services on my website, catlantat.com. So KATLANTAT.com. We're kind of doing a co-marketing venture together. So there's information about there about what he provides and what his business is about.
Yeah, and also he wants to put together a referral program where if you begin to understand what his primary deliverable is and are able to refer him to a client, he would like to set up a rewards program. And I'm just going to leave it up to him to follow up on that. So I don't have anything else. Does anybody have any other questions?
I just wanted to comment on the final slide that Lee has put up here. We are seeking your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And just go ahead and quickly jot a number into the chat on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being low and 10 is high, on the extent that this session was helpful for you. And we're not going to let you off with just putting a number in there. If you've given us a 10, tell us why. And if you have anything less than a 10, tell us how we can improve. We love it. Feedback is is welcomed.
Stuart, thank you for hosting today. And I'm looking forward to next month, our meeting with Wayne Bright on LinkedIn, and June 11th at 8:30. And then we got a great rest of the year going, so I'm pretty fired up about it.
Well, thank you everyone for your participation and your engagement. It was a pleasure to be with you today.
Let me share one more closing comment, and that is, if you wish to save the chat, there is a lot of valuable information in there. I encourage you to do that. You can do that by saving chat, clicking on those little 3 dots on the bottom right-hand corner and save it to your own devices. So saving the chat allows you to look at it later. And that will, again, if we can figure out where to host this, be available to you, because I'll save it as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate you being here. Let's try to get back together again next month. And if anybody needs help with anything, please reach out to me, and we will do our best to make sure we're all going to be staying together moving forward in a profitable way.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Be well.
everyone.
Cool.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great day.
Everybody.
Have a good one, all.
Bye-bye.
Lee, John, I'm going to hang on just for a quick debrief if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
Or looks like John's already kicked themselves off.
Uh-oh. Just a minute. I'm not sure if we're done here yet.
We are all done, so I'm going to kick you out of this. Can I kick you out? Remove.
If you
Goodbye, Ken.
Later. Have a good.
And Karen will kick her out as well. Hang on. So one more moment. Karen, remove and gone. And recording.